This is Animals at the Columbus Zoo Wild. This canine, native to sub-Saharan Africa, is the African wild dog, or often called the painted dog. Now, the pack life of these social animals is very interesting because the females, rather than the males, disperse from the natal pack after sexual maturity. This is because there is a matriarchal hierarchy where there's an alpha female instead of an alpha male. Also, once the meal is attained, the young or the pups basically get to eat first, and the pups of the alpha female. Now, interestingly enough, these diurnal hunters will literally hunt their antelope prey to literal exhaustion. And then they tear it to shreds and eat it, because it's delicious. Antelope. Now, African wild painted dogs are considered to be endangered, with only about 6,600 mature individuals left in the wild today. These family-oriented dogs will defend their pack when needed. These beautiful canines are not to be trifled with. So, if you're in the African savannah and you're going around, enjoy them from a distance. This is an American bison. Many people would call it a buffalo. They would be wrong. Old World true buffalo, the Cape and the water buffalo, are found in African Asia, while bison, not buffalo, are found in North America and Europe. These herbivorous ungulates graze in sages and grasses in North America. Incredibly enough, these bovids will stand about 6 feet tall and weigh 2,500 pounds. These beasts can run straight up, like 40 miles an hour, and have a vert of about 6 feet that would make Michael Jordan cry. Imagine seeing a bison dunk. It'd be kind of cool, not gonna lie. Now, there are about 500,000 bison on private land, about 30,000 on public land, and of those 30,000, about 15,000 are considered to be truly wild. Can you imagine seeing these absolute freight train trucks coming out of nowhere by the thousands and just trampling towns? That'd be sick. Terrifying, but sick. This is an American burying beetle in the family Sylphidae, which is a group of Coleoptera known for eating carrion. These beetles used to reintroduce nutrients back into the ecosystem by taking those carcasses that would normally just sit on the top and use them faster in the ecosystem. Now, the American burying beetle is actually the largest burying beetle in North America. These nocturnal beetles are actually very strong flyers. You can fly up to like a kilometer in one night. Now, it's called the burying beetle because of its breeding habits. It finds a 200-gram carcass, breeds on it, and then buries it. The interesting thing is that they exhibit biparental parenting. Both the male and the female take care of the young, which is very rare in insects. Now, these beetles are great parents and take amazing care of their young. Considered endangered, these beetles are on the cusp of critical status. Now, these beetles will only live for about a year, which means that breeding is very important. If there's a lack of 200-gram carcasses, they won't breed as much. Part of the reason they think these beetles have become endangered is due to a lack of food source. Only a few populations exist in the wild today. That's what the wild is trying to change. This is the Bactrian deer. This lowland subspecies of red deer is actually native to Central Asia. Now, this deer, unfortunately, is extremely rare in the wild today, with major issues such as poaching and predator species such as Himalayan wolves, brown bears, Dole, snow leopards, European lynx, and wild boars will eat them or their young. Unfortunately, there are only about 1,430 individuals thought to exist in the wild today. Luckily, that population is growing due to efforts from places like the wild that are breeding them to send them out, bolster their populations so that you, me, and everyone else, and including the ecosystem, can benefit. This is the Bentang, and it is a species of cattle found in Southeast Asia. These bovids are extremely sexually dimorphic. The males look different than the females. Males, or bulls, are dark brown and black. Females, on the other hand, are pale brown to chestnut red and are a lot thinner. Both the females and the males have horns. These herbivorous ungulates are actually considered to be endangered, and their populations have decreased 50% over the past few decades alone. There are only about 5,000 to 8,000 of these guys left in the wild today. That's a small number with wild populations. And the Bentang is actually the second endangered species to be successfully cloned. Native to Africa and Iraq, this is the cheetah. I probably already knew this, but this is actually the fastest land animal, able to run upwards of 80 miles an hour. It weighs like a max of like 160. I weigh more than 160. I outweigh a cheetah. Now, these predators are mostly diurnal and crepuscular. Breeding year-round, these guys have a gestation period of only about 3 months, and the average litter size is between 2 and 4. Now, these adorable cubs are weaned at about 4 months and are independent around 20 months. Now, the name cheetah is actually derived from Sanskrit chitraya, meaning painted, adorned, or variegated. Now, its scientific name is Acinonyx jubatus. Acinonyx basically means fixed nail, referring to its claws that aren't retractable. It's the only cat without retractable claws, which is why when they first saw these guys, they were like, hey, it's a dog! And they looked at it again, they're like, oh, that's a cat, yeah, for sure. Jubatus means mane, which is referring to the males having small mane. Now, they are considered endangered. Places like the wilds are actually working on bringing back these endangered. This is the Chinese goral. Now, these small, goat-like ungulates are native to Myanmar, China, India, Thailand, Vietnam, and Laos. Living in groups of up to 12, these guys are mainly predated upon by leopards and wolves. The main threat facing this creature here is actually hunting. They are killed for their meat, fur, and for medicine. Now their population is actually on the decline due to overhunting, and it is now considered to be actually vulnerable to extinction. Zoos, like the wilds, are working to preserve these adorable gorals. This is the common eland, and it is a savanna and plains antelope found in eastern and southern Africa. Now these herbivorous antelope will herd up in groups of up to 500. Now its scientific name, Particulate Oryx, basically translated over means bull, goat, pickaxe. Now these guys are sexually dimorphic, which means they look different. The males look different than the females, and the males can be up to almost 2 times the size of the females, where the males will be around 2,200 pounds and the females will weigh only around 1,300. Thankfully, they are currently listed as of least concern, which basically means that they are plentiful in the wild. However, due to increased habitat loss, concern is rising. So places like the wild are doing their part to hopefully bolster these populations, keep them strong, keep them going, so you and I can enjoy them in the future. This cute little guy is a Dole, and it is found in Central, South, and East Asia. Mwah! Beautiful Asiatic wild dogs. This highly social and adorable canid lives in large clans without rigid dominance hierarchy. These guys are diurnal pack hunters. That means their whole pack goes out in the day and says, oh, what should we eat? With only about 2,500 mature individuals remaining in the wild today, they are considered to be endangered. Reasons for their decline include habitat loss, prey loss, increased competition, persecution due to livestock predation, and unfortunately, disease transfer from domesticated dogs. Luckily, places like the wilds exist to bolster those populations. This is the eldest deer. Now this endangered species of deer is native to South Asia. Now these Asiatic cervids face poaching for its hide and its impressive antlers. Now they are also hunted for food. This is just another great example of a beautiful endangered animal here at the Columbus Zoo Wild. This is the fringe-eared oryx, and it is a subspecies of East African oryx, although new data seems to suggest that they should probably be their own species. Now the males may be a little bit heavier than the females, weighing around 460 pounds, whereas the females will probably be on the lower end, maybe around 415 pounds. But other than that, there's no noticeable sexual dimorphism, and as a result, the males can be hard to distinguish from the females. Now when a female is getting ready to give birth, she'll go off on her own, give birth, and then stay out there away from the herd for about 3 weeks. After that 3-week period, she and her baby are basically ready to come and rejoin the herd. This is done to help escape predation. Speaking of giving birth, they can actually give birth every 11 months, and they become sexually mature between 18 and 24 months. Now these beautiful fringe-eared oryxes will live around 22 years in captivity. Unfortunately, they are considered vulnerable. It's still a healthy population, but there is concern rising. This is the greater Woodhorn Rhino, and it's a real-life unicorn. I know, bulkier than we thought, right? Their scientific name, Rhinoceros unicornis, means nose horn of an animal, one horn. Found in the Indian subcontinent, these guys will weigh around 4,850 pounds and stand about 6 foot 10 inches tall. Now, although they may look a little bit bulky, these guys can run up to 34 miles an hour. This is the linesman the Steelers need to actually have. Now, it's the second largest animal in Asia, right behind the Asiatic elephant, and it is the second largest rhino in the world, right behind the white rhino. Male rhinos are a little bit larger than the females. These thick-skinned horned ungulates are actually closely related to, you guessed it, horses. Actually not closely related to pachyderms, elephants, and hippos. Now these guys have great hearing and phenomenal smell, which makes up for their terrible eyesight. These grazing herbivores are under threat of habitat loss, poaching, and lack of genetic diversity. With a little more than 3,500 individuals in the wild today, they are considered to be vulnerable. Because of this, several reintroduction programs have been set into motion, and hope looms on the horizon of this literal unicorn. This is the Gravy Zebra. I'm just kidding. I'm not British. But I am going to be doing a British accent for the rest of this video, so hold on. This is the largest wild living equid, the Gravy Zebra. Sadly, it's also the most endangered zebra. Compared to other zebra, it is actually much taller. It has thinner stripes, and it has larger ears to help it cool down. Now this zebra is endangered, and from 1970 to 2008, the population dropped from around 15,000 to only 3,000 remaining in the wild. Thanks to conservation efforts, like here at the wilds, populations are stabilizing. Hit the plus for more animals at the Columbus Zoo Wilds. Did the British accent work? Did it make me sound more official? Thanks. Cool. snot otter, Allegheny gator, lasagna lizard, devil dog. This is Cryptobranchus allegheniensis, the Hellbender. My favorite American amphibian. Now, this is the largest amphibian in North America, reaching lengths of up to 2.5 feet and weighing around 5.5 pounds. Being the 5th largest amphibian in the world, it is the 4th largest salamander in the world, right behind its cousins, the 3 giant Asiatic salamanders, and the 5th largest amphibian right behind the African Goliath frog. These fully aquatic salamanders live in pristine, cool water, rocky streams. Now, although they do have fully functioning lungs, they don't use them to breathe. In fact, they use them for buoyancy. So then where do they get their oxygen from? They actually use something called cutaneous respiration. They have capillaries in their skin that actually absorb oxygen through the water. This is great. They can get their oxygen and be underwater the whole time. Although they let a lot of good stuff in, they can also let all the bad stuff in, like the pollutants. This makes them great bioindicators. If the water or a stream system is not clean, they don't do well. They are pollutant intolerant. And you'll actually see they have that fleshy thing on the side, and they look really wrinkly. That's to increase surface area, so that they can absorb more oxygen. Eating fish, crayfish, and invertebrates, they use something called a lateral line, like what fish have, to help detect vibrations in the water to find their food. They have terrible eyes, they can't see well. And once they find their food, they suck it in, eat it, go back down, vibe. They don't really go out from under their rock very often. And they are nocturnal hunters. If you're worried about these guys in your stream or ecosystem, and you're like, oh my gosh, it's terrifying. It's nocturnal, they're hard to come across, they're not aggressive, so you can't really get hurt by a hellbender. Unfortunately, they are near threatened and considered endangered in many of the states in which they are from. They are on the decline, like most amphibians. This is mostly due to pollution and lack of healthy, cool streams. So it is so imperative that we help protect the Pennsylvania state amphibian, that's where I'm from, and do the best we can to bring these beautiful, peaceful giants back into our wildlife. Efforts at places like the wilds are so important because they are building those populations back up and doing research on how we can better improve our streams and ecosystems. This is the Maasai giraffe, and it is the largest subspecies of giraffe. Native to East Africa, they have distinctive, irregular, jagged, star-like blotches that extend all the way down to the hooves, and a median forehead lump is usually present in the bulls or the males. Now, these even-toed ungulates have an 18-inch long, rough tongue that it uses to wrap around and eat its favorite food, the whistling thorned acacia. Now, the roughness of the tongue is important in 2 ways. 1, it grips the leaves that it wants to eat. 2, it protects against the acacia's 3-inch long thorns. Now, these guys are considered to be endangered, and their populations have declined 52% in recent years due to poaching and habitat loss. Only about 35,000 individuals remain in the wild today. These tall, handsome, majestic, and charismatic megafauna need our help, and that's what places like the wilds are doing. Found all throughout Africa, this is the largest flightless bird, the ostrich. They actually lay the largest egg of any living land animal and can run up to 44 miles an hour. They actually belong to a group of birds called ratites, which have rheas, emus, cassowaries, ostriches, and kiwis. Watch out getting too close to these guys, because although their bite is not that bad, their kick can literally gut a lion. Its powerful running legs actually have talons or claws at the end, so when it kicks, boom, it can gut you or any animal that can get in its way. They are a beautiful, powerful creature that demands respect. Native to the river valleys of China, this is the Pure David's deer. Unfortunately, in 1939, the last known wild deer was actually shot and killed. That's why they are now extinct in the wild today. Fortunately, places like the wilds had remnant populations that they were already breeding those remnant populations to hopefully eventually push them back into the wild. This is why it's imperative that places like the wilds exist, because they don't just work with endangered species, they also work with species that are potentially beginning to become endangered so that we can prevent them from becoming extinct in the wild. So the Persian onager, ha! I don't know why I said that in an Irish accent or whatever the heck accent that was, but yeah, I think it sounded kind of cool, so I'm leaving that in the recording. Like I said, this is the Persian onager, and it is actually a subspecies of onager. The word onager, basically translated over, means wild ass. Persian wild ass is another name for it. Native to Iraq, these guys are considered to be endangered, with only around 600 individuals remaining in the wild today. Threats facing the Persian onager include poaching for its hides and its meats, drought, and competition with livestock. Luckily, places like the wilds have these Persian onagers so that we can breed them back to a healthy population. Native to Mongolia and Russia, this is the Przewalski horse. Now, these guys are actually really closely related to domesticated horses, except they have an extra pair of chromosomes. The Przewalski's horse has 33 pairs of chromosomes, while the domesticated horses have 32. Now these herbivorous equids are actually endangered. In fact, they're the rarest equid breed in the world, and they're considered to be the last truly wild horse. Among the rarest cranes in the world, this is the red-crowned crane. These cranes stand about 5 feet tall, with an 8-foot wingspan, weighing upwards around 23 pounds, with the males being larger than the females. These are absolute monster-sized birds. Now these gruiforms are actually omnivorous, which means they eat a little bit of everything. Found from Siberia to northeast China, and occasionally in northeast Mongolia, this is actually what they sound like. Yeah, it's terrifying. This is just another great example of a beautiful animal at the wild with the Columbus Zoo. This is the Particulate Giraffe, and it's typically found in the Horn of Africa. The Particulate Giraffe gets its name from its patterning, its reticulated patterning. Like other giraffes, they have those comical looking bumps on top of their head that are called ossicles. And this would be used in male-to-male combat or necking, where the male will actually just whip with its neck at the other giraffe. Males will often do this for territorial reasons as well as breeding rights. Speaking of their neck, they have the same amount of cervical vertebrae as humans. 7. Also, the name giraffe is derived from Arabic, meaning fast walker. Now this subspecies of giraffe is considered to be endangered, with only about 9,000 individuals remaining in the wild today. Along with the Rothschild's giraffe, it's actually one of the more common giraffes you will find in zoos today. This is the sable antelope, Hippotragus niger, and it's a species of antelope found in woodland savannas in eastern and southern Africa. So these guys are actually sexually dimorphic, which means the males are a little bit different than the females. In this case, the male is about 1/5 larger than the females. In addition, the male's horns are a little bit larger. Living about 20 years, these herbivorous diurnal ruminants are just another great example of the animals that are here at the wilds with the Columbus Zoo. Found in northern Africa, this guy, the Cemetery Oryx, went extinct in the wild in the year 2000. Since then, some very small populations have been re-released. Now these guys are actually sexually dimorphic. The males are different than the females. I know, I say this all the time. In this case, the males are larger than the females. Interestingly enough, did you know that the mythos of the unicorn partially comes from this oryx? From a side view, they kind of look like they have one horn because they're so symmetrical. Places like the wilds are working to bring back these absolutely legendary antelope. This is the Szechuan or Tibetan takin. These guys are actually found in the same dense bamboo habitat that you would find the giant pandas in. With these goat antelope, the cows give birth to one kid every spring. And within only about 3 days, this takin can actually follow its mother around in pretty much any terrain. I was still in the hospital when I was 3 days old. Now the reason this is so important that the kid gets up in 3 days is because it's more likely to escape predation. Now, its scientific name, Bordurcus taxicolor tibetana, basically translated means ox-cow antelope with badger-like coloration from Tibet. Who names these things? Now, I don't mean to be talking about Tolkien's Tibetan takin, but this kind of looks like it belongs in Lord of the Rings. This is the sika, or the Japanese deer, and it's typically found in the wild in East Asia. The name sika, from sika deer, comes from the Japanese word shika, meaning deer. So its name literally means deer. Now, unlike deer we have here in the United States, like the white-tailed deer, they actually retain their spots when they mature. That's also why they're called the spotted deer. Now, there is a little bit of sexual dimorphism, which means the males look different than the females, and in this case, the males are larger than the females. Now, this deer has actually become really uncommon everywhere except Japan, thus the name the Japanese deer. That's why they're actually still considered to be of least concern, even though everywhere else they're pretty much gone. The southern white rhino. So it is the southern white rhino, but it actually should be the southern wide-nosed rhino. It's because it has a blunt nose, as opposed to like every other rhino that has a really pointed nose, like the black rhinos or the other Asian rhino. And someone heard white, that stuck, so it's called the southern white rhino instead of the southern wide-nosed rhino or the southern wide rhino, and it makes everybody confused because it's not really white, and everybody's like, no, all the scientists, no, it was supposed to be wide. And everybody's like, wait, why wide? Because of the nose. Oh, it makes sense, but why is it called the white rhino? Just remember it has a wide nose, basically. Now, these guys are found in South Africa, and they're considered to be near threatened. Threats facing it today are poaching for its horn, which is used in traditional Chinese medicine. This is the Trumpeter Swan. Naturally found in North America, it is the largest extant species of waterfowl, with a wingspan of about 8 feet. In 1933, less than about 70 Trumpeter Swans were thought to have existed, until an aerial survey discovered a Pacific population of several thousand individuals near Alaska's Copper River. River. Now it's estimated that there are more than 46,000 individuals in the wild today, and as a result, they're considered to be of least concern. This is the Bactrian camel, or the Mongolian camel, and it is the largest even-toed ungulate native to the steppes of Central Asia. The temperatures where these camels reside is incredibly diverse. In the winters, negative 40 degrees Celsius. In the summers, 40 degrees Celsius, with the water sources being extremely limited. Now these diurnal ungulates are induced ovulators, which means that they ovulate after insemination. Bactrian camels are visibly different than dromedary camels. Dromedaries have one hump, Bactrians have two. Bactrian camels are considered to be critically endangered, although they were once domesticated, and those domesticated counterparts are relatively common. They also live in groups of up to 30 and are fully migratory, which means they basically move all the time. Now there are only about 1,400 individuals remaining, but they are considered to be the 8th most endangered large mammal in the world. Threats facing it are poaching, wastes its ecosystem decline, wolf attacks, hybridization with its domestic counterpart that could eventually lead to sterility, illegal mine drainage, habitat, and food loss. Fortunately, places like the wilds exist where we can eventually bring these guys back into the wild. Follow for more animals at the Columbus Zoo Wilds.